stairwell in New York. Just got a place in New York. In New York, summers get hot. Well into the hundreds. You can walk around the block.
Did you see what I was painting, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to look, sir.
Well, I am sorry for that. For your sake. I don't paint accurately. Anyone can paint accurately. I paint with such wonderful expression. In the realm of art, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, do you have those cucumber sandwiches cut for Mrs. Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, and by the way, Lane, I can see from your book that on Thursday night, when I dined with Mr. Worthing and Mr. Shorman, that 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Tell me, Lane, why is it at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask, merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself, up to the present. I have been married only once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I am not sure that I very much care about your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you to New York?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring anyone anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Alvin.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
Oh, in California.
What on earth do you do there?
Well, when one is in New York, one amuses oneself. When one is in California, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors, neighbors.
Got good neighbors in your part of Orange County?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
And how immensely you must amuse them. DMC is your county, isn't it?
Orange County? Why, yes, of course. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming for coffee?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta. And Gwendolyn.
How delightful.
That is all very well, but I'm not so sure that Aunt Augusta will approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way she flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you came for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are, Alfie.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then the excitement is all over. No, the very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I will certainly try to forget the fact. Please do not touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're reserved especially for Mrs. Bracknell.
But you have been eating them all the time.
Well, that is because she is my Aunt Augusta. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. She's devoted to her bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
Oh, you need not eat it as if you are going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already. I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth would you say that?
In the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. They don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one finds all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean by Cecily, dear Algie? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Please bring me that cigarette case that Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
You mean to say you have had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I've been writing frantic emails to the NYPD about it and was very nearly offering a large reward.
I wish you would offer a reward. You see, I'm more than usually hard up.
There's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I find the thing isn't yours at all.
Of course it is mine. You have seen me with it 100 times, and it is a very ungentlemanly thing to read the private cigarette.
Yes, but this is not your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone with that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady she is too. Just give it back to me, Algie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt?
From little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some ants are tall, some ants are not tall. That is a matter which an ant should surely be allowed to choose for herself. You seem to think that every ant should be exactly the same as your ant. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle?
From little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack.
There's no objection, you see, I admit, in an ant being a small ant. But why any ant, no matter what her size may be, would call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, her name isn't Jack at all. It's Earnest.
My name isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You have always told me your name was Earnest. I have certainly introduced you to everyone as Earnest.
Ernest.
You answer to the name of Earnest. Why, you even look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I've ever met in my whole life. It's perfectly ridiculous you're saying your name isn't Earnest. It's even on your cards.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
I think I shall keep this in case you ever attempt to deny your name is Ernest to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in New York and Jack in California, and the thing was given to me in California.
Yes, but that does not explain why your small Aunt Cecily calls you her dear uncle. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a secret and confirmed bumberist. I'm not quite sure of it now.
A bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a bunburyist?
I will reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are so kind to tell me why you are Ernest in New York and Jack in California.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew adopted me when I was just a boy and made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who refers to me as her uncle from motives of respect which you cannot possibly appreciate, lives at my place in California under the charge of her admirable nanny, Miss Prism.
Where is your place in Orange County, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I will tell you quite candidly that the place is not in Hollywood.
Well, I suspected that. I have bumburied all over Hollywood on 2 separate occasions. But do go on. Why are you Ernest in New York and Jack in California?
When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce one's health or one's happiness. In order to get up to the city, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Earnest, who gets into the most dreadful of scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure, and never simple. What you really are is a bumberist. I was quite right in calling you a bumberist. In fact, you're one of the most advanced bumberists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother by the name of Earnest, in order that you may come up to New York as often as you please. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid by the name of Bunbury, in order that I may go to California as often as I like. Why, Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for his extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't have the pleasure of dining with you at the Rainbow Room tonight. I've been really engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I would not have invited you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
Oh, I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It's very foolish of you. You know, nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
I really think you much better dine with your Aunt Augusta tonight.
I have the smallest intention of doing anything of that kind. In the first place, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is more than enough to dine with one's own relatives. And in the second place, whenever I go there, I am treated as a member of the family, and sent down with either no woman at all, or two. And in the third place, I know perfectly well who she'll place me next to. She'll put me next to Mary Farquhar, who flirts across the table with her own husband. That is not pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase these days. The amount of women in Manhattan who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. You see, I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother Ernest. I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily's becoming a little too interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of my brother Ernest, and I strongly advise you do the same with that with that invalid friend of yours who has that absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury, and if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be more than happy to know Bunbury.
Well, that is nonsense. If I marry a girl like Gwendolyn, and she is the only girl in my life I've ever seen that I would marry, I would not want to know Bunbury.
Well, then your wife will. What you don't seem to understand is that in married life, 3 is company, 2 is none.
Don't try to be cynical, Algie. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It's not perfectly easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors are in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get Aunt Augusta out of the way for 10 minutes or so you can propose to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you at the Rainbow Room tonight?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Oh, yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about meals. It's so shallow of them.
Mrs. Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you look smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave very little room for developments. And I plan to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry we are a bit late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Mrs. Harbury. I had not been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And I will have a cup of coffee and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Of course, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mother. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane, where are the cucumber sandwiches? We ordered them especially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some stones with Mrs. Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite blonde from grief.
It certainly has changed its color. From what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a pleasant woman, so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, I will have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's used to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment. But the fact of the matter is, I have just received an email to say that my poor friend Bunbury is ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Oh, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say that I think it is high time this Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathies with invalids. Consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly the thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling this to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I would be much obliged if you would ask this Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse this Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last dinner party, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has said practically everything they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I will speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he's still conscious. But I think I can guarantee he'll be all right by Saturday. Now, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. Well, I'll run over the mix I've created if you will kindly join me in the next room.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. The music, I'm sure, will be delightful after a few minor edits. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mother.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain that they really mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
Gwendolyn, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any other girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. I only wish that in public, at any rate, you'd been more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. And my ideal has always been to love a man with the name of Earnest. Something in that name inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love him.
Gwendolyn, you really love me?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't mean to say that if my name wasn't Earnest, you couldn't love me.
But your name is Ernest.
I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And, like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't think much of the name Earnest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Really, Gwendolyn? I think there are other, much nicer names out there. Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? No. There is very little music in the name of Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I've known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must be married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Yes. You know that I love you, and you led me to believe that you were not perfectly indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject hasn't even been touched on.
May I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity, and to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you to say to me?
You know what I have to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, would you marry me?
Of course I will now. I'm afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. You are the only one I've ever loved.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope that you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture! It is most indecorous!
Mother, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mother.
Pardon me, Gwendolyn. You are nothing of the sort. When you do become engaged, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come in a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a matter which she should be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me in the car.
Mother.
The car, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the car!
Yes, Mother.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Mrs. Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you, Mr. Worthing, that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name should your answers prove to be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes. I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some sort. There are far too many idle men in New York as it is. How old are you?
29?
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to be married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Mrs. Bracknell.
I'm glad to hear it. I cannot approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. What is your income?
Between $1 and $2 million a year.
In property or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
Well, that is satisfactory.
I have a house in California, but I do not rely on that for my main income.
A house in California? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up later. You have a house in New York too, I hope? A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in California.
Well, yes, I own a townhouse in the village.
Which side of the village?
The east.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could be easily altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. Are your parents living?
Well, no. I must admit I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth.
Well, actually, I must admit I don't know who I am by birth. When I said I had lost my parents, it would be nearer the truth to say they had lost me. I was found.
Found?
Yes, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an older gentleman of a very kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a small town in South Dakota.
And where did this charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for South Dakota find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, in a handbag. A somewhat large, black, leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
And in what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the coat room of Grand Central Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The coat room at Grand Central Station? Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it has handles or not, seems to me to show contempt for the modern decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to.
Well, then may I ask what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say that I would do anything to advise ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, sir, to try and acquire some relatives as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my closet at home. I really think that should be enough to satisfy you, Mrs. Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has this to do with me? You can hardly expect that I and Mr. Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a coat room and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning, Mrs. Bracknell.
Bum, bum, ba, bum. Bum, ba, bum. Bum, bum, ba,
Algy, stop singing that ghastly tune. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old friend? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? I know there's a way she has. She's always refusing people. I think it most ill-natured of her.
As far as Gwendolyn is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a Gorgon. I don't actually know what a Gorgon is like, but I'm sure she is one. She is a monster in any case, without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I should not talk about your relatives this way before you.
My dear fellow, I love hearing my relatives abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. You see, family is just a tedious pack of people who haven't the smallest inclination of how to live, or the slightest instinct of when to die.
That is nonsense. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does, though. I suppose that's his. But did you tell Gwendolyn about your being Ernest in New York and Jack in California?
My dear fellow, that's not quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, refined, sweet girl such as Gwendolyn. No, what extraordinary ideas you have to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to go out with her if she's pretty, and go out with someone else if she's plain.
That is nonsense.
But what about your brother? What about Ernest?
Before the week is out, I think I'm going to get rid of my brother Ernest. I'll say he died in Chicago of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they, Algie?
Yes, but that's hereditary. You know, the sort of thing that runs in families. You had much better say, a severe chill.
And you're sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off in Chicago by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't you miss him a great deal?
Oh, don't worry about that. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, no. She has a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and hardly pays any attention to her lessons at all.
Oh, I would rather like to meet Cecily.
I will make sure that you never do. She is excessively pretty, and she is only just 18.
And have you told Gwendolyn yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is just 18?
The truth isn't quite the sort of thing one blurts out to people. No, Gwendolyn and Cecily are sure to be great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only call each other that after they have called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear fellow, if we want to get a good table at Lorraine Ballroom, we really must get a move on. Did you know it's nearly 7?
It is always nearly 7.
I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
And what will we do after dinner? Go to the theater?
No, I loathe listening.
We could go to the club.
No, I hate talking.
We could trot around to the Met.
No, I can't bear looking at it. It's so silly.
Well, then what are we going to do?
Nothing.
Awfully hard work doing nothing.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolyn?
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Ernest, we may never be married.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by mother, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination, and the simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your address in the village I have. What is your address in Orange County?
904 North Beverly Hills, Beverly Drive.
It may be necessary to do something desperate. This, of course, will require serious consideration. I'll communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in Manhattan?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I've turned around already.
You will let me see you out to your car, my own darling.
Certainly.
Lane, I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes,
A drink, Lane.
yes,
Tomorrow, Lane, I think I'll go bunkering.
yes,
I don't think I'll be back till Monday. You can pack my dress clothes, my bathing suit, the Bunbury flip-flops.
yes,
I do hope tomorrow will be a good day, Lane.
it never is,
What a perfect pessimist you are.
I do my best to give satisfaction.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I have ever loved. What are you so amused about?
Oh, I'm just anxious about poor Bunbury, is all.
If you don't watch out, Bunbury is going to get you into some dreadful scrapes someday.
But I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense. You never speak anything but nonsense.
No one ever does.